My good buddy, Mr. Farrakhan.
What do you see as his qualifications?
His dislike, his intense dislike for Jaime's.
Try the light. Yeah, is it playing? Is it recording? Think you can hear?
My good buddy, Mr. Farrakhan.
What do you see as his qualifications?
His dislike, his intense dislike for Jaime's.
Okay. All right.
Press the button again.
You can tell that you're getting it through there. But now adjust the levers and you'll see the difference. Okay, out talking one, talking. Some so that we have. You have to have some at the head of the tape. So this is a test. Testing. Maybe in a couple of seconds.
Here he is in the Navy. Did you want that one?
Okay, you ready?
Here's the only picture we've got of you as a boy.
Here's one in the Navy, Jack.
Okay. Now, let's turn off the date. Okay. The first thing that you'll just say is today's date. And should we unplug the phone in here? What your name is and how old you are.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
All right. So how's his mic? Did you put his mic on? Okay. It's going to get muffled down here. Oh, you stuck it behind him? Okay. Usually it goes under the shirt. Yeah, that's more pleasing. There's more stuff in it. That's your nice white chunk. Okay. First thing you say is today's date, then your name, and how old you are. Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, it's July the 30th, 1988. My name is Mitchell Schemmer. I was born on April the 25th, 1912.
Okay. And you tell us how old you are.
I am 76 years old.
Okay. All right. Hey, quiet on the set.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Then say, and today in my living room in Jacksonville, Florida, we are recording a video legacy.
Today in my living room we are recording a what now?
A video legacy.
Oh, video legacy.
Okay, try it one more sentence.
Today we are recording a video legacy in my living room. Okay.
Okay, that's good enough. All right. The first thing I'm going to ask you about is your ancestors.
Yes.
And as far back as you can remember, or that you're aware of, your furthest back ancestor, and just tell me a little bit about them, what their names are, how they're related to you, what country they came from, everything that you know. We'll just start and get all the ancestors out. And then just, you'll start with my ancestors and then go on.
Are you ready? My ancestors' history, so far as I know, relates back to a great uncle whose name was Macy Measle. He lived to be 108 years old. He had 8 children, of which one was my grandmother. They came from a small town in Lithuania called Push-A-Lot. Many of them settled here in Jacksonville, many in Baltimore. Today we have a family reunion of most of these people.
Okay. Go on from, tell me about some of your uncle's family, the other that you can remember.
So far as my uncles and aunts are concerned, I had an Uncle Barry Hisser, who was the oldest in the family. My father, whose name was Hellman, was the youngest. He had two brothers that I know of. One was killed in a robbery attempt. The other died in Miami. He was a sheikh, which is a killer of cattle and chickens. My aunts, one lived in Dallas, Texas. The other lived here. The other aunts I never knew.
Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do is, let's see, let's get into, that's the furthest, your great uncle is the furthest you know. As
Yes.
far as going back. All right, let's get into your family. Are there, go ahead and start with your great-grandfather.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to start with your father.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and tell us your father's full name. Say my father's name was, and I'll ask you different points about him. You're going to want to change shots every time we change different points of view. Okay, a little bit. Okay, go ahead and start with what your father's name was and where he was born.
My father's name was Hyman Schermer. Some called him Hellman Schermer. He came from the small town of Push-A-Lot in Lithuania.
Okay, and tell me about his family. How many were in his family, and what? And then when you list his family, tell me the names of everybody in his family.
Now, he had, so far as I know, 3 brothers, and I knew of 2 sisters. I know that he had more sisters, but I never knew them. My Aunt Ida, an Aunt Fanny, and I believe an Aunt, let's see, well, Max Rose's mother was Malky. Is that the name? Yes. Her name was Malky, which I never knew. And I believe there was another aunt, too, but I never knew them.
And your brothers? His brothers? Their names?
My uncle's name were Bear Hissom, Velvel, Fivey, and that's just about all that I knew of.
Okay. Tell me their age order. Who was the oldest brother and where your father fit into that age order? And tell me by name, if you could, please.
My oldest uncle was Bear Hissom. Now, I'm not sure, but I believe the next one was Velvel, and following him was Fivey, and then my father was the baby of the whole group.
And how did the sisters fit in? What order were the sisters?
The sisters, my Aunt Ida was the oldest. How old Malky was, I do not know, but Fanny was, so far as I know, younger than Aunt Ida, who was the oldest.
Okay.
What kind of business would your father?
Okay. I'm not a occupation yet. That's not. Okay. Tell me about a little bit about each of their lives, each of your uncles that you know about.
Yeah.
What they ended up doing, all that.
My uncles came to the United States, I believe, through Baltimore rather than New York. And from Baltimore, they came to Jacksonville. My oldest uncle, Bear Hisser, bought cattle and sold cattle. My Uncle Belleville had a grocery store until he was killed. My Uncle Pivey was a shepherd. Like I mentioned, he's the man that slaughtered cattle and chickens, so forth on. My father was in the fruit business.
Okay. And everybody came over through Baltimore?
I believe that most of them came through Baltimore rather than New York.
How old was your father when he came over to the United States?
Well, now, my father's age, he came to Jacksonville, I believe, in 1907. Well, 1907 is 81 years ago, isn't it? Yeah. No, more than that. What am I thinking of? But I believe when he came to Jacksonville, he was in the neighborhood around 21, 22.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what your father was like, what he looked like. Did you ever see pictures of him when he was younger?
My father wasn't a big man, but he was well built, very muscular, about 5 feet 8 inches tall. He always had a mustache, so far as I remember him. He was a nice looking man, very quiet, loved to play cards.
Okay. You need to make the shot tighter. See how much headroom there is?
Okay.
I want to do with these non-union. Okay. What kind of education did your father have?
Well, my father, when he came here, he never went to school, and he actually no education whatsoever. I knew he couldn't write English, and he spoke with a broken tongue, so to speak. He couldn't write either. He could write Yiddish, though. I guess he must have gone to Cheder, which is this Jewish school over in Pushalat.
It's a great name, Pushalat. Okay. And your father is not alive today?
No. My father passed away in, I believe it was 1944.
How old was your father when he passed away?
He was around 66, I believe, which kind of surprised me because I thought he was older than that, but checking it, he was just 66 when he passed away.
Do you know what the cause was? Or?
He died with cancer.
Okay.
Let me interject.
Sure.
You're going to edit out your questions.
Right.
So you need to start your sentences with, I guess, my father died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cancer. So
Yeah.
you got to remember, her questions won't be in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Right. A lot of things, though, if he says my father was 66, then I edit and he says he
Okay,
died of
I
cancer,
just-
it would be okay. But yeah, that you're right. When you do a wide shot,
Uh-huh.
you're going to have to tilt down so that you don't have that headroom that I was
Okay.
talking about, okay? And every time we change the subject, if you can change the
Okay.
shot, that would be
Why don't you
good.
ask him like a fondest memory of your father or something?
Okay. All right, I was going to get to his mother now, but yeah, we'd do that. If you want to tell me some stories about maybe some of your fondest memories of your father, or what you remember the most about him, or something that is striking about your father.
My father was a very interesting person, that he loved to play cards. On Sundays and holidays and even weekdays, there would be quite a group of the family, the young boys, and we would sit on the porch, which we had a large porch, and play poker or pinochle. And he loved this.
For money?
Yes, for money, I should say so. Yes, he very seldom won, though.
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to say about your father? We're going to get into your mother now. Was there any other stories, or any story in particular you can recall that was either funny or sad or just memorable in any way?
No, my father lived a very quiet sort of life. I mean, he never really got excited. He was, as I mentioned before, he was a very quiet person, and he never had anything bad to say about anyone. He loved to tell jokes sometimes.
Do you remember any stories?
No, I don't remember. I don't remember any of the jokes he told.
How was he as a business person?
Oh, okay. How was he as a business person?
Well, he didn't do too well there. He was very big-hearted, so to speak, and some of his relatives kind of took him, borrowed money and never paid back, but that didn't bother him. And I can recall buying about 6 carloads of watermelons, and when they came to inspect the watermelons, they were green and they were condemned, so he lost the 6 cars of watermelons. There are many stories like that that I could tell you. He would bring home old grapes, crates of grapes, and my mother would make wine, barrels of wine out of the grapes.
Okay. All right. Speaking of your mother, let's get into your mother now. Tell me what your mother's full name is, if you would tell me her maiden name, and then tell me where she was born. You can tell me about that.
Now, my mother was a different sort of person than my father. She was outspoken, I believe very, very brilliant, and self-taught. She was born in Pushalot, the same place my father was born. Her age was about the same as my father, and her name was Sarah Goldie Fram, F-R-A-M.
Okay. And tell me about her family. And tell me what each of her siblings' names were, and if you can, in order.
Yeah. Well, I never knew any of her sisters or her brothers, but I knew of an uncle, a brother by the name of Harry, that lived in Cumberland, Maryland, and I knew of a aunt who lived in Europe, not in the United States. I don't even remember what her name was, but I do know her daughter, 2 daughters that I know of, Becky, and the other one is Minnie. Now, she had a brother that came over here with her when she came to the United States, but he didn't like it here, and he went back. Her whole family, we tried to find them, but we never could find any information as to what happened. Of course, those were the days of Hitler, and we feel like all of them were killed.
Okay. Tell me what your mother looked like. Tell me a little bit more about her personality.
My mother was a very good-looking woman. In fact, she had quite a few old-time beaux, from what some of them would tell me. And I hardly remember my mother as a brunette, although she was a brunette. Her hair turned gray when she was quite young. Had beautiful gray hair, wavy hair, so to speak. And everybody liked my mother.
Tell me a little more about her personality. You said she was outspoken. Was she funny? She had a good sense of humor?
She enjoyed living. She enjoyed playing, let's see, what is it that the churches have now?
Bingo?
Bingo. She would have as many as 10 cards on the board, and how she ever managed to control that, I don't know. But she did, and like I said, everybody liked her. Many people would come over to see her even though they weren't related to her. But she had a few cousins here in Jacksonville. Well, I'd say quite a few.
Okay. Let's see. Tell me about your mother's upbringing and her education.
Like my father, my mother had no education whatsoever. She spoke Yiddish very well, but she tried to learn how to write her name in English, which she did, but she couldn't read English. She couldn't, I don't think my mother even could read a Jewish paper, although my sister Molly could. Formal education was out of the question for these people who came from Lithuania. All of them lacked financial assistance.
Okay. All right. The shot should be, that's more interesting than that wall. And you're also getting the light there. Okay. And then come down a little. Okay. And then we'll cut out the headroom. All right, you'll get the
You
whole
should
figure.
put makeup on you,
You're doing fine. How does the audio sound?
I can hear, I only have this, it's just maybe
don't they usually go around pouting?
That's right, the powder. Okay. I asked you, I asked about the occupation, right? Did your mother work? Was there at any point in time when your mother worked?
When I was growing up on Monroe Street, where I was born, my father had a grocery store and he bought 2 other little grocery stores, and my mother ran one of the grocery stores. Her brother, an older brother of mine, ran another, and he ran the other. Of course, these grocery stores broke him too, because he would give credit, and when he went to check on these people, they had moved out owing the money. So he went out of the grocery business.
Okay. And your mother is not alive today?
No,
Okay.
my mother passed away, I believe, in fact, I can't even remember the years, but she was 94 years old when she passed away.
Okay, and that was of old age.
Well, yes, I would say old age. Yeah, old age would be the thing.
Okay. Now we're going to get into the marriage. About how, I'm going to ask you about how your parents met and how long they dated and when they were married and where they lived once they were married, and then we'll slowly move into your family. So go ahead and tell me how your parents met.
You know, many people have asked me how they met, how my mother and father met. I couldn't tell you. But I do know that my father came to this country first. He worked, and he wasn't married. He worked, saved up enough money, and he paid her passage from Lithuania to the United States, in which she came in Baltimore. But he brought her into Baltimore, where they were married. They lived there for a while, where 3 children were born, and then moved to Jacksonville. Now we're in Jacksonville.
Okay, do you know anything about their wedding?
I don't know anything about where they married, when they were married, or who was there, who wasn't there. That I've never heard them speak of.
Okay, then we'll get into your family. We're gonna talk about your brothers, your family, your siblings first, and then we'll get into you. Okay? All right, this is going fast. All right. List all your siblings from oldest to youngest and tell me each of their names, and then we'll go on and you can tell me a little story about each of them. But first, go ahead and list them by name, you know, and by age rank.
I had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. The oldest brother was born in Baltimore, and his name was Sam. The second was born in Baltimore, and her name was Molly. The third was born in Baltimore, and his name was Benny. The first to be born in Jacksonville was Fanny. Then I followed Fanny. Following me was a brother, Philip. After Philip, there was a sister, Lena. After Lena, there was a brother, Harry. And after Harry, there was a brother, William.
Okay. What did you want me to hear?
Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't hear it?
Right.
Yeah, you might even come down a little bit because we can hear a hum. Bring it down just one notch. I wouldn't even go down that far, just one notch. Okay. Now I'm going to ask, and tell me where you fit. Where did you fit in that rank?
Of the 9, I was right in the middle. The 5th from the oldest and 5th from the youngest.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to tell me a story go through each of your brothers and sisters and tell me what they look like, a story about their personality, what you can remember about them, and then we'll go on and you can tell me what they're doing. But first tell me a little bit about each one, you know, their personality, what they were like, if they were a joker, whatever.
My oldest brother, Sam, was uneducated. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think he went through the 6th grade in school. But he had a heart of gold, a big, and he loved children. He took after my father. He loved to play cards. And he was a hard worker when he worked. But he died with cancer also. My sister Molly was well educated and Jewish, traditions and so forth. She could read and write Yiddish, speak Yiddish like an old-timer. She was also very kind-hearted, lovable, considerate. The next was a brother, Ben, who was the handsome one. All the girls were crazy about him. And he was a good basketball player, too. He played basketball with the YMHA here. He later married a girl in Waycross, Georgia. He became a owner of a bank there, so he did fairly good financially. Had 2 daughters. One moved to Fort Lauderdale. So after many years of operating a jewelry store in Waycross, he left Waycross and went to Fort Lauderdale to be near his daughter. The next one in line was Philip. Now Philip went through high school.
I have a correction. I think the next one in line is Fanny.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm foul up there. The next one in line was Fanny.
Okay, start again, say it again, because we had too much noise. Go ahead and start. The next one in line.
The next one in line above Philip was Fanny. Now, she was the firstborn in Jacksonville. She loved to play basketball. And she also was a saleswoman most of her mid-youth, so to speak. But her education only took her through high school also. And she was fairly well liked by all. Had a big family of 3. The next one, huh?
Who did she marry? Fanny married?
She married a fellow by the name of Julius Levin, who originally came from Boston and moved to Jacksonville. They had 2 daughters and 1 son. The next one in line was Philip. I believe I mentioned something about him. He also went through high school, played football at Andrew Jackson High School, and he's pretty mechanically minded. He was wounded in the war at Anzio, and later became a radar technician at the Naval Air Station here, where he repaired radar on these fighter planes. The next in the line was Lena, excuse me. Lena did not finish high school. She married a Nathan Barber, who came to Jacksonville in World War II to be trained at Camp Blanding. And they had a boy and a girl.
What were their names?
The girl was Shirley and the boy was Harold. The next in the line was Harry. Now Harry was a nice looking boy. I would say more warm-hearted than any of us, because when my father passed away, he took my mother in and did his best to make her happy, which he did. He married Frances, and they had 2 boys, Marty and Harold. The next in the line was William, the baby. Now, William finished high school, and I would say he was probably the smartest in our family, but never had any muscle, never had any luck. And he's living in Miami today.
Okay. Tell me where they are now, what they're doing today. You told me a little bit about it.
Yeah.
But go ahead and go through them again and tell me where each of them are now. Excuse me for a second. When he's going, you know, in a whole shot, try to keep the camera still, because every time the camera moves awkwardly, I have to edit that out.
Yeah, but most of this you're just gonna hear his voice.
Well, it depends on how many photographs you've got. Lots?
This
Okay.
is where you got a lot of photographs.
Okay.
You should mention their names and something amusing, because you have so many photographs of like Uncle Harry or Uncle Sam, or well, you don't have many of Sam, but of all the others. And you should mention their wives' names, so when we shoot the photograph, you know, at that time. You know what I
I
mean?
don't think Lena would appreciate you saying she didn't finish high school.
Ooh.
Lena.
Well, yeah, the truth is the truth.
Yeah,
Right.
but things don't like,
All right, all right.
sometimes you
All right.
color it a little bit.
Okay.
Am I right? You
But-
just don't say it, that's all.
Well,
Okay.
that's all right. Yeah, tell me each of them what they're doing today, and you can go ahead and tell me their names of their children, what you can remember. Go in order.
So far as trying to keep update with my immediate family, my brother Sam passed away. He was the first to pass away. His wife's name was Rebecca. They had 2 boys. They had 2 boys, Melvin and Barry. My sister Molly also passed away, and she had 2 boys, Leo and Morris. My bro-
Who was Molly married to?
Oh, Molly's husband's name was Max Merkus. He was in the dry drugs business in North Carolina, but later moved to Jacksonville and had the same business here. He also has passed away. My brother Ben, his wife is Helen, who came from Waycross, Georgia, and they had 2 daughters, Flora Jean and Carol. My sister Fanny husband was Julius Levin, and they had 3 children, Rosalind, Elaine, and George. My brother Philip married Margaret, and they had 1 daughter whose name was Phyllis. Now, let's see, I'm at Philip now. We go to Lena. Lena had 2 children. One was She's living today, by the way. So is Fanny. So is Philip. Her children's name is Shirley and Harold.
And Lena's husband?
Uh,
Lena's husband.
Lena's husband was Nathan Barber, who came from Connecticut, by the way. No, Rhode Island, excuse me. Rhode Island. Now, the next in the line was Harry. Harry's wife's name is Frances, and he's living. He has 2 boys, one Hal, and the other Marty, excuse me. The next is William. His wife's name is, well, I better not go in that another part here, but, well,
Who are you?
You were saying that,
Val.
when
well, he was married to Helen,
he was married to Helen,
Stevens.
Well, go ahead and start with
Sure.
that person.
yeah, but they divorced, and he's now married to Val. They live in Miami, and he had 2 boys, Irving and
Hold on.
Alan.
Are you picking that up?
Irving and Alan.
Let me stop you for a second.
Let's take a break.
Well, well, your dad's going. I think we can hear that on the microphone. The lawn.
Yeah.
Wait till he moves a little bit. Let me tell you what I'm going to ask you after this. Do you want to go over what they're doing today? Okay. If you want to tell me about the occupations of each of your siblings, you can just tell me their name and then what their occupation was, and maybe an interesting. Actually, an interesting story, if you have any, about each of them that you can most remind you of what they were like.
The occupation of the members of my family, beginning with Sam, he worked for different places. In fact, he was with the Seaboard Railroad. He was also in the fruit business. He was also in the container business, like boxes and crates and hampers. Molly worked in a grocery store. She also worked in a woman's ready-to-wear store. Fanny was also a saleswoman, worked in different women apparel. Let's see, we get down to Philip. Now, Philip, as I mentioned before, was a grocery man. Of course, when he got out of the service, he went to work for the government as a radar technician.
How was, tell me how, Philip was wounded, right?
Yes.
Tell me how Philip was wounded. What happened?
Philip was in the invasion of northern Italy, and he was sent out on a patrol with a few others, and he was hit. And a very interesting story about that when they sent him to the field hospital, one of his cousins from Dallas, Texas, waited on him, which is very unusual. As I mentioned, he was when he came back out of the service, he became a radar technician. Lena worked in a grocery store. That's just about the only place she ever worked. And Harry worked for Coen Brothers, which was a department store here, worked in stationery, and later I got him a job with the Wolfsons, selling surplus stationery that they bought with the big shipyard that was closed here. William worked at different jobs. He worked as a salesman, mostly. He worked in construction of homes when it was very popular being involved with the new homes that were being built right after the war.
Okay, that's fine. Do you have, if you can, whatever stories, do you have certain stories you can remember about, if not all the siblings, some of the siblings, some of your brothers and sisters, any certain cute stories or funny stories or, you know, just some kind of story that you would want to tell your family? How's it?
Well, a funny story happened years ago when Sam bought a diamond ring. Now, when I say a diamond ring, I don't mean a big ring. I mean one that's kind of hard to see. It was so small. And when he bought it, he used to always flash it like this so everybody can see it. One day, he flashed it like this, and everybody said, I don't see no diamond. And what had happened was that the little diamond had fallen out and was lost. He never knew it.
Okay. You want to come out long? We missed the hand motion on that shot. It's okay, Jack. That would have been cute. Okay, and a little too much head. Come down. Okay. Any other stories you can remember about any of your brothers and sisters that was kind of their personality? That's a good shot, okay.
No,
No?
No.
None of them?
no,
Okay. We'll go on then.
You don't have any stories that you can remember?
no, no, no.
All right. Now this is for your grandchildren.
Yes,
Okay.
all right.
All right. We're gonna get into your childhood. Into your childhood.
Yes.
Okay. So tell me again where you were born, and if you know what time you were born, the date you were born, the circumstances of your birth.
Getting back to me, I was born on Monroe Street in the year of 1912. As to the time, I don't know. I grew up being a park man, so to speak. Always out in the park playing ball or something that nature. On the same street that I lived, many of my best friends, even today, still are living. Many of them have been very, very successful financially, like the Wolfsons. They live next door to us. Like, the Borks, one of them passed away, but Morris lives in Orlando. He's fairly well off. And quite a few of these people that I was brought up and raised with became very well off financially.
Okay. But what about the camera angle? Your dad's not looking into the camera. Do you want to move the camera to where it's comfortable to your dad? Or he looks off to the left. I don't know.
Can you look into the camera, Dad?
Yeah,
Are the lights too bright?
but no, it's all right.
Okay. All right. And this, you were in, the street, Monroe Street, is in Jacksonville? You were born in Jacksonville?
Yes, I was born in Jacksonville. I'm very proud of it. I've always been a big booster for Jacksonville.
And you were born at home, so your mother did not go to the
Yeah.
hospital. Go ahead and tell me that.
I was born in the house. In those days, many people didn't go to the hospital as they do today. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe everyone but, let's see, I think William was the only one that was born in the hospital, the rest of in the home.
Okay. Tell me about your upbringing. And were your parents strict? Did you get in trouble?
My parents were very easy on us. Being there was 9 in the family, why, they never disciplined us. I can remember my father hitting me one time. And my mother...
Yeah, what did you do to get hit?
I can't recall, but I used to get in fights with the older brothers. And my father, like I said, very seldom hit any of us, but that time he laid it on me. My mother would yell at us, but she never hit us.
Didn't your mother throw something at you?
Yeah. My brother William, being the baby of the family, why, he was a spoiled brat. And one day in the kitchen, he started raising Cain about this and that and moaning and groaning. And I reached over and I socked him. My mother got excited. She was pouring a cup of coffee, and she threw the sauce at me and cut me pretty bad, but she didn't know it. I walked out, and I never told her that. I always hid it, the scar that it left.
Sad. Okay. All right.
Did you beat up Uncle Bill after that?
Okay. Tell me about, let's see, tell me about what your life was like then. What did you do?
In those days, we didn't have television, so we didn't go to bed late. But being that a lot of the basketball was being played at the boys' club, or the YMCA, we would go play basketball, and we might get home 9:30 or 10 o'clock. Over in South Jacksonville, they had a siren that would go off at 9:30, and all children would have to be off the street, or the police would pick you up. Well, we watched that pretty careful because we didn't want the police to pick us up. But about 9:30 was about our latest of staying up. But we played a lot. Ball, basketball, not football, but baseball, and any other thing, football.
Okay. What did you want to do when you grew up? Did you have ideas of what you wanted to be?
When I finished high school, I thought of being a lawyer. And I went to college, and I took pre-law. But in those days, there were so many lawyers, many of them not even making $15 a week. Many of them not even practicing after getting their law degree. Changed my mind, and I changed over to education, become a school teacher.
Okay. We're going to get into school now that you started
Yeah.
that. Tell me exactly the schools you went to, where they were. Go ahead and go through your education. Let's change the shot here.
I lived in a section called La Villa, which many of the Jewish people live. And I went to a school that faced the park, called La Villa Park. I went there for 4 years through the 4th grade. And we finally moved from Monroe Street to Hubbard Street, where my father bought a house on Market Street, but we moved in Hubbard Street while they were fixing up the house on Market Street. I went to Fitton Hubbard School, from there through the 6th grade. From there, I went to Kirby Smith, and from Kirby Smith, I went to Andrew Jackson. And from Andrew Jackson, I received a football and basketball scholarship at Stetson, in which I completed 4 years there.
And what did you played football and basketball in
Yeah.
Stetson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me how you handled all that and school.
Stetson, they couldn't afford to give you those big scholarships, so rather than give you a scholarship on one field of work, they would rather have a person who could participate in more than one. And I played basketball and football baseball, I could have played that too, but they didn't have a baseball team there. So I played basketball and football there.
Were you treated, you know how colleges nowadays, they treat the athletes like they're stars and they treat them specially. Were you treated differently?
I was treated just like any other student at Stetson. Although I was one of 2 Jews that was in the school. Stetson is a Baptist school, as you know. But there was a fellow who was the boxing coach, whose name was Korn, and he was from Chicago. He and I were the only 2 Jews there.
Was there anti-Semitism?
I had trouble one time with a redneck. Of course, later, the redneck was kicked out of school for immoral things that had happened with him.
Tell me that. Can you tell me that story? What happened? Do you remember what was the story that happened with this redneck?
Now this redneck played football. Not only was he a redneck, but he had red hair. Big, 220-pound boy. We were playing Oglethorpe up in Atlanta. And in those days, the elevators had operators on them. And it happened to be that this operator was a woman in one of the elevators. And he got on the elevator that night and made passes at her and grabbed her and so forth on. When we got back to D-Land, the home of Stetson, the coach got us all down in the dressing room and told him that he wanted him, the redneck, out of school by tomorrow morning. I want you out of here. And that was the end of the redneck.
And what about can you tell me about the trouble you had with this redneck? Did he just call you names, or what was the anti-Semitism he did?
Well, we were all in a room facing the courtyard. Myself and a Paige Haddock, who later became a judge here. My roommate, Ken Luton, who was a great big, husky, powerful man, and a couple other fellas. And we had a lot of oranges that we would go out and steal from the citrus groves. And Red, we looked out the window and Red was coming towards the dormitory. And Haddock picked up an orange and he threw it at the redneck and hit the redneck. The redneck came running up to the room, and I was lying in the lower bunk. There was there was 2 double-deckers in that room. I was in the bottom. I was sitting there, and he came up and began asking, "Did you throw that?" Of course, when he got to me, he didn't even ask me. He just sailed into me, and I was lying there. But he didn't hit me because my roommate grabbed him and tore him up. And that, I'm sure, was because of anti-Semitic feelings.
Okay. Let's see. Tell me, what subjects, either in elementary school or college, did you think you excelled in, and what subjects did you hate?
While going to school, I never was a good student, so to speak. I would say C, maybe a C minus. But I did excel in history. I used to read history books like they were novels. I made very good grades there. But the problem I had was with the language. I took German in college, and it almost took me, even though German is like Yiddish. I could understand Yiddish partially, but I couldn't speak it. So our language was my most difficult subject.
What about math, science?
On math, I was fairly good, but when it came to business arithmetic, I was very good. But algebra and so forth, I just got by. Science, the same way. I mean, just about a C-minded student. I didn't study as hard as I should. That I know.
Okay, well, you were busy playing sports. Okay. Tell me about your school sweethearts. Let's change this. Let me get this adjusted here.
Gotta go in a little more about sports at Jackson. Don't you have a lot of stories about playing there?
Now, when you're in high school, you think about girls. So who were your girlfriends? Well, I really never, yeah, I did have one. I had one. I wouldn't mention the name right now because she's a married woman with great grandchildren. And I played the field, so to speak. I mean, I went out with all of them. Went to dances, had a wonderful time in high school, which I think was one of the best times I've had in my life. In college, why, I went with about 3 different girls for a while. In fact, I heard from one of them who phoned me not too long ago.
Was any cheerleaders?
No, but they would, the girls in high school would play up to me because at the big football game between Lee and Jackson, they would point these girls to be, what do they call them now?
Hostesses?
What?
Hostesses?
Well, something of that nature. And one was elected, the other being if you were the captain of the team, you get to point yourself. And I was captain of the football team, so I got to point one, so the girls all played up to me. I know it was that, it had to be. And I point the one that I wanted.
Who was that?
Well, it happened to be a girl by the name of Marsh, her last name. You know, I even forgot her first name.
Were they Jewish?
No, no. Although Jackson had more Jews in this school than any school in the city at that time.
Okay. All right. Did you ever get in trouble in school?
Yep. I can say that I got in trouble quite a few times. One time, the fire alarm went off, and we heard the siren and the bell to leave, and we were marching down, and I broke line, and I ran to the back of the school, and the smoke was so thick you couldn't hardly see. When I reached the door, I noticed this smoke bomb lying on the steps, and it was smoking like nothing. I took my pencil, which I had, and I stuck it in, and I took it outside. When I did that, the principal and a few of the executives walked out and looked at me and, we caught you. Well, it wasn't me. It was, I knew who it was. In fact, a fellow by the name of Sykes, who later became a general in the Army. They were in the National Guards, and they had taken one of these smoke bombs when they went on maneuvers and set it on at school. And that was one time I got in trouble. But another time I got in trouble, we couldn't leave the school grounds. I believe my son Jack can tell you that, because he got in trouble once leaving the school grounds and almost killed. But anyway, at lunchtime, I would walk down about a block from the school to get a sandwich. Coming back, as I was getting ready to cross the street, who should come by but the principal in his car. He stopped the car. He says, "What are you doing over here? You go to my office, and I'll be there shortly." So when I went to the office, the lady who was secretary there, she was, everybody was crazy about her. She always was doing something for someone. And I told her, I said, you know, I'm in trouble now. The principal caught me off the school grounds. So she says, well, when he comes in and jumps you, you tell him that he gave you permission to leave. So I sat in his little ante room. When he came in, he looked at me, and Mr. Shummy, he said, you're supposed to set an example here, and I'm ashamed of you leaving the school grounds when you know it's not proper. I said, you gave me permission. He says, I did? I said, yes. He said, well, going back to your classroom. So I got out of that.
Okay, tell me the third time.
What?
You said you got in trouble, you think 3 times, was it? Was there another, can you remember the other time you got in trouble?
Oh, God. No, that's just about the
About it.
only trouble.
Okay, let's see. Okay, we're going to get into the adult life unless you have some more.
You might want to talk about the sports because you got some good pictures from sports teams. You might want to talk about some of the guys that played on the team.
That's what I was thinking, some of the stories about your games that you played.
Yeah.
That's what I think would be more interesting.
Do you want to do that?
I feel terrible, you haven't eaten anything. You must be starving. You want me to fix you something, Jack?
I'm fine. He's fine.
What do you want me to fix you?
All right, we ready to shoot?
Sure. What do you need?
You want to go into athletics?
Sure, let's do that. What are you doing?
Here's just a group of people. Just hold this here.
Okay.
That might help you.
Remember?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you tell me about your, let's come in a little tighter here, about your sports history, about yourself as an athlete.
Yeah. As you remember from the past, I always mentioned that I always was in the park or on the street playing or going out at night to the boys club or the YMCA. In other words, I would be a gym rat, as they call these people who hung around. And I loved athletics. That was my whole life. There was nothing else but athletics. I was a pretty good sized boy, although I'm not big now compared with the others, but I was about 5. Even in junior high school, I was almost 5'9", and I weighed 160 something pounds. In college, I weighed 183, but 160 some odd pounds and 5'9", pretty good sized boy. Now, I played basketball and football at the junior high school, and went on to high school where I made the first team my first year there. I played football with a pretty good ball club. We had a lot of boys on that team that became well known, one internationally and others locally. Excuse me.
Do you want a drink of water?
No.
You okay?
I mentioned Page Haddock. He became a judge. In fact, his son's a judge here. Lou Wilson, who became famous internationally as a financier. Henry Kramer, who became president of Food Fair in the Jacksonville area. Bud Brandt, who became a big, what I would say, land owner and developer, and many others who I participated in athletics with. In high school, I played 3 years of basketball and 3 years of football. I was captain of the football team, and I was captain of the basketball team. I made all Big Ten in basketball. I made a lot of teams in football, and baseball. We didn't have a baseball team in Jackson, although I used to love to play baseball, never to watch it. I went out for track, but that wasn't my line. I threw the shot put, and I believe a girl could throw as far as I did, time around 35, 37 feet, which was a 12-pound shot. I got a scholarship at Stetson. I had a scholarship at Alabama, and I had a scholarship at Georgia Tech. But it was one of those ifs. If I made good as a freshman, I would get the other 3 years. Stetson gave me all 4 years without any things thrown in as to whether I made good or made not. So many of my friends told me you're better off going to Stetson. You'll be a big dog in a little pond rather than a little dog in a small pond. So I went to Stetson, where I spent 4 years playing football and basketball. I did play baseball at Stetson, but this team was composed of boys who just went out on our own. The school did not sponsor it, and we used to play the prison, play other teams. We had a pretty good ball club.
Tell me, do you remember any specific games where either you saved the day or something funny happened, or an interesting story about any kind of games?
Well, I remember in one game we were playing, I even forgot the name of the school we were playing, and I made 3 touchdowns and ran for quite a few yards, and we won. And another game, I remember the score was 6-0, favor the other team. I was playing linebacker. They threw a pass, I intercepted the pass, and I ran for 40 yards for a touchdown. Then I kicked the extra point, giving us a victory of 7-6.
So you kicked the point too?
Yeah.
What were your positions on each
Well,
position?
I was a linebacker on defense and played the backfield on offense.
Did you ever have anti-Semitism when you played any of the Miami teams?
No.
I thought there was a story about them.
Lou Wilson, yes.
What was that about?
In high school, my first year, as you remember, I mentioned that we had a pretty good ball club and pretty good size team. And we went down to play Miami High School. Now, we knew that Miami recruited players like a college did. In fact, they were tremendous. We were big, but they were tremendous. I mean, for instance, they had 2 tackles that weighed 240 or 250. Their guards were over 200 pounds each. Their ends, one of them started at Michigan later, and the other was a good size end. And we played them on the field in back of the school there. And Lou Wilson was our right end. And this big tackle began to talk to Lou by calling him Jew and stuff like that. And Lou was about to go get after him. Lou was a big boy himself. He's about 6'1", about 200 pounds, and pretty strong. But we kept Lou from jumping him then. But after the game was over, which we won, by the way, I threw the pass that beat them. We beat them 7-6. And after the game, the bus had come to pick us up, and we all got on the bus, and Lou came on the bus a little later. All of a sudden, we heard a siren, and we didn't know what the siren was about. The ambulance went up, further up the field, And later we found that this tackle was brought to the hospital. Somebody had really hit him. Well, who could it be? I mean, we looked at Lou, and Lou didn't say nothing. But that's exactly what happened. That night, when we changed clothes and ate, getting ready to go home right after the game, their coach came up and said, "What did your boy Wilson do to our tackle? He almost killed him." So that was the only piece of anti-Semitic feelings that we had.
Yeah. Did you have black players?
No.
Tell me about what
No.
how it was racially in high school here in Jacksonville.
Well, I never played against any black boy. In fact, I believe it's, 1950-something that the schools became integrated? Of course, I finished in 36. So we never played against any team that had...
You never played against any black teams at all?
No.
What was it like in Jacksonville then, as far as being open-minded, or just how
well,
minorities are treated?
we had a lot of rednecks, especially in Ocean Way, which used to come to our school. And we had the separate drinking fountains, separate toilets, sitting back of the bus and so forth on. But they were just like any other southern city. I mean, they didn't recognize a black.
Was it, how about Jews? Were there signs, no blacks, no Jews?
No, not Jews. But there was a lot of anti-Semitic feelings toward the Jewish people.
Okay, we'll go on something else. All right, I'm going to skip, let's see. Okay, yeah, we'll do this. Okay. I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to get into husband and wife. Let's see, we already went through, there weren't any great loves or a story of a great love lost or anything like that that you wanted to go into, was there?
No.
Other than your wife, of course. No?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna go on to let's see. I thought the part about your love life and marriage when you got engaged was you with your mother. So why don't I go into some of his philosophy and get your dad, and then we'll go to the marriage, and we can do your dad and mom and the children, and then we'll come back and do your mom's history, and that'll give your dad time to rest. Does that sound okay?
Fine.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you sort of
Have you did his profession?
no.
Or do you do that?
Oh no, I guess no, that's actually once they get married. Let me ask, I'll go ahead and do that. Why don't you tell me about your profession as far as after you graduated school? You know, after you graduated college, what you did.
Well, as I mentioned before, that I took law, pre-law, and I changed my mind and went into education. And I received the minor in history, social studies. No, I had a major in that and physical ed. When I graduated, I thought I could get in Jacksonville, but something happened, even though they had told me I would have a job next year. So I waited, and the job didn't mature. And someone gave me a school that needed someone, so I caught a bus and went down to a place called Port Orange, which is, well, the southern part of Daytona Beach. And I was interviewed by the principal, and they hired me, and I spent almost 4 years there teaching 5 different subjects, being the coach, and physical ed also.
What were the 5 subjects?
I taught geography, physical ed, American history, European history, civics.
Okay. How are
And
you doing? You all right? You want to drink of water or anything?
beg
Are
pardon?
you okay? Do you want something to drink?
No,
You all right?
no.
You ready to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. How are we doing with an angle? Because If you can try to remember, I know it's hard, but try to look a little bit more towards the camera.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So tell me a little bit how long you worked at the school that you worked at, and tell me about, you can tell me your professional life up until now.
Well, I stayed at Port Orange for about 4 years, and the new superintendent of public schools, by the name of Daniel Boyd, I went by to see him and told him that I was from Jacksonville and that I had been promised a job and it never came about. And he told me that's the reason why he was elected. To be fair, he says, we'll do the best we can to get you back here to Jacksonville. And sure enough, I received the job as one of the physical educators at Kirby Smith Junior High School. And I came back to Jacksonville and taught physical ed, and I became the head coach there. I did very well with basketball. I believe I must have won, in 4 years, I must have won 100 and some odd games, and I doubt seriously whether I lost 5 in all that time, 5 games the whole time. And I couldn't get along with the principal at Kirby Smith, and I went to see my roommate, who was principal of Andrew Jackson High School, Bob Locken, and I told him that I wanted to get out of there, and he took me as a physical ed teacher and then as assistant coach at Jackson's. So I left Kirby Smith and went to Jackson, where I stayed until I retired in 1974. I coached JV football, JV basketball, tennis, swimming, and I helped in track. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I also was dean of boys at Jackson. I used to do the paddling, so forth on.
So you paddled a lot?
Oh yeah.
Hard? I did what, paddle? Okay. When you were at Kirby, how did you paddle the boys?
Not at Kirby.
Only at
I
Jackson?
wasn't. At Jackson, I was dean of boys.
Didn't you paddle at Kirby Smith?
I paddled at Kirby Smith in physical ed, yes.
How was that done?
I had a paddle that someone in the woodwork shop made for me. And they bent over and grabbed the ankles, and I'll swap them. I see in the papers now where they're going to make it illegal to do that.
Didn't you afford them some due process?
Well,
wasn't there a question asked of all the other members in the class before you swatted them?
Well, some of the rules were that you couldn't swap one unless you had another faculty member present to keep you from tearing them up if you had lost your composure, see. And that's the reason why they want you to have another faculty member there.
So how many swats? Did it depend on the crime?
It all depends. I mean, I didn't try to really hurt them.
Didn't you used to, let's go to the story, explain how you used to swat them when you had everyone in the rows from the class, and then you would ask them guilty or not guilty? And they would all shout guilty, and then they would be, do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I mean,
that was you afforded due process to these people. I was very impressed.
But you know how the boys are. They want to see someone whipped.
Explain how you did it. State how you did it.
I've forgotten how I did it, but if I caught, if I caught them doing something that they're not supposed to, I used to ask the rest of the class, is he guilty or not guilty? Of course, they all say guilty. So I'd say, assume the angle. That means bend over and grab your ankles. And I'd pop them.
Okay. So let's see. Were there any stars, superstars that graduated from your Jackson or the other school that went on to either, National Basketball Leagues or college stars?
Well, the best all-round athlete that I had, I believe, is was Spanky Man. He was a very good high school football player, a very good basketball player, very good track man, and a good baseball man. He received a lot of scholarships, but he never took any of them. And he went to work for Coca-Cola, and he did exceptionally well with them, and became one of their big executives. And he was moved to Gainesville, I believe, where he supposed to run. From there on, I don't know whatever happened to him.
But there weren't any...
But I had one fella who went on to become head coach at Vanderbilt University in football. And he resigned, I believe it was last year. His name was, it's funny how I sit over here and try to think, and I know him so well, and I can't even think of his name. Well, George McIntyre, who was the head coach at Vanderbilt University, football.
Okay.
He's probably the, oh yes, I had one black boy who I coached who did very well in football at Tennessee. He made the All-American freshman team, but later he got in a little trouble and left there and went to West Virginia, I believe. His name was, what was his name, Jack?
Ken Lambert.
Ken Lambert.
What was the trouble?
He began to associate with a black, what do you call, the white was a redneck, the black was a racist.
Sort of a radical group?
Yeah. So he began to associate with one on the football team, and the coach kicked him and the other fellow off the team, even though he's a very good football player.
Huh.
That's about as close as the football players came to being something big in college, although I had a few that did pretty well.
What about basketball?
Well, basketball, no, although I had some good basketball players. We had quite a few that went on to college that played ball, but never prominent in it.
Okay. Is there anything else that I missed that you wanted to ask?
No.
Okay. I'm going to get into some, we're going to skip your love life and when you got married and all that, and your children. I'm going to go into some philosophy questions. I'm going to ask you just sort of general statements, and you can answer them or you don't have to answer them. But, okay. If you were asked, what would you say was the best time of your life?
You know, I've had a lot of good times all my life. My last 5 years of teaching wasn't so hot. I mean, all kinds of problems. The kids wouldn't study. You give them homework, they wouldn't do homework. They talk back to you. The administration never backed the teachers. After you suspended them, the next day they were back in school. But I would say that one of the best times in my life was as a student in high school. In college, I had a nice time, but I used to worry about my subjects. Like I said, I didn't study too much, but like exams would come up, I would stay up half the night studying. That's about the only time. And but in high school, I didn't have to do much studying. I could have probably done a lot better if I had, but like I say, I was a C- student.
But it was the best time because you were carefree?
I felt important. Everybody looked up to me, being I was on the basketball team and the football team and captain of this and captain of that. I received the gold watch for being the most outstanding football player at Andrew Jackson by the man in green, as they call him. He gave me a green gold watch, which I lost in California during the war.
Okay. I don't think we got into the war. We didn't get into military service. That's probably after you got married, wasn't it?
No.
Before? Okay, do you want to get in? Should we get into that or not?
Yeah.
Okay, let's skip back. We didn't get into your military service. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your military? What you did when you went, all that.
Well, when it looked like World War II would pull us into the war, we all were drafted. I mean, had to sign up for the draft. Rather than wait for the draft, I looked into some of the things that I would more likely want. So I went up to Atlanta where they were recruiting for special, they call chief specialist, which would be something like a physical educator. And I was accepted and sent to Norfolk, Virginia, where I was trained, and I left Norfolk, Virginia, and I went to San Diego, California, where I was put on a tough chief who taught us a lot about the Navy, of how to treat men and so forth on. From there, I was sent to Great Lakes, where I began to train boots myself. I had companies there, and I had, by the way, I had the best company there. I received, they have a banner for having the best company, in which I had quite a number of times. From there, I felt like sitting there doing this wasn't for me, so I volunteered to go to sea. So they sent me to a school, and I took gunnery. From there, I was sent to the Hawaii to aboard a ship, which was the USS Monrovia. I beg your pardon. Before that, I was put on the DE, a destroyer escort. I served about a year on that, and I was in one invasion, Christmas Island in the Pacific, and the captain recommended me for a commission, so I was sent back to the United States and sent to the University of Arizona, where I went to school there for 6 weeks. Our bedroom was the gym, in which all of us slept in the gym in double deckers. We had a drum and bugle corps, and being I was an old timer, so to speak, I volunteered as a bugle. I didn't know how to no more blow a bugle than anything, but I knew that it would keep me out of a lot of work. So as we would march over to the drill field, the bugle corps, I'd hold it up to my mouth like I was blowing it, and of course I wasn't. When we got to the field, why, we would sit down while the others drilled. Well, I left there, and I was sent to New York, where I went to school at a merchant marine school at Frog's Neck, as I recall. From there, I was ordered to the ship that I would be on, but when I got to San Diego, it had gone, left there. So I caught a little old ship which they wanted me to be the captain of. I turned that down, and I went on this little LCI, landing craft infantry, and I wound up in Pearl Harbor. My ship was there. When I boarded her, I noticed thousands of Marines on board the ship. I didn't know what the story was. And I was an ensign. I became an ensign. And these Marines were going to invade the island of, Saigon. Not Saigon, but, oh gosh, How could I forget that? Anyway, they were ready for an invasion. We left Hawaii and sailed to the east, no, the west, sailed to the west, where we had the invasion of Saipan, the invasion of Saipan. And it was something, I mean, something you don't believe. Thought I was sitting in a movie watching a war picture to see all these bombs and these planes and tracer bullets and everything else. And of course we invaded Saipan and we won. I was in 9 invasions in the Pacific all the way up through with this ship, the Monrovia. And finally we came back to the United States for repairs, and we received the war was over, so we received word that with so many points you could get out. But I didn't have enough points at first because I wasn't married, and you got 10 points for being married alone. But anyway, I finally got enough points. We got so many points for being overseas, and I was overseas quite a bit. And on leaving the ship was pulling out, going back to the way out the Pacific. I had to jump around 5 feet, at least 5 feet from the ship to the dock to get off because it was leaving. And we had to wait for papers to come back, and that way I received transportation to Jacksonville, but we couldn't get transportation to Jacksonville. I had to sit around in Seattle and wait till I had a chance to get back to the Naval Air Station here at Jacksonville, in which I was separated. Although, I mean, I wasn't put out of the Navy. I'm still inactive. I came out. I was a lieutenant. That wasn't my regular my regular rank, permanent rank, is Lieutenant J.G. Lieutenant was just temporarily.
Okay. All right. How are you doing? How's everybody doing?
Good.
Okay?
How you doing? Can I give
I'm
you
fine
something?
now. Can't
Come
make
on,
a noise
sit.
here, Jack. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I'm hungry.
I know, but this mic picks up all this.
Oh, that one does?
Ambiance.
I thought that one's on.
No, that's still hooked up. You're getting ambiance in
Oh.
there. Okay. I'm going to go back to the philosophical questions. All right. Tell me about... Okay, come there. Okay, and one more take there. Yeah, good. Okay. Tell me what the worst time of your life was and how you felt you survived it.
True.
Well, the worst time of my life was that I used to worry about my children. Jack doesn't know this, but it bothered me so that I thought I was going crazy. That I thought his respiratory ailments were so bad when he was young. And it bothered me so that I went up to a psychiatrist. I don't know whether Shirley remembers that, but I couldn't sleep, thinking that something was wrong with him. But thank God, everything turned out all right.
Okay. Tell me... Okay. Tell me what people have influenced your life most? What people or person has influenced your life the most?
I would say that many of the coaches that I had and my mother influenced my life quite a bit. The coaches, well, they talked to me quite a bit, told me how to live life and what to do under certain situations. And all these people that I knew, these friends of mine, felt like I was a pretty fair sort of a person.
And how did your mother influence you the most, do you think? What did she teach you, or what do you feel that you got out of her influence?
Well, she taught me to respect other people and to be good and kind.
Okay. All right. What are you most proud of?
My two boys. I'm very proud of my two boys, especially in this day with all this dope and what have you, that they came through with flying colors. And what they're doing is something that they had to work hard for to do. So that's what I think I'm very.
You even proud of Jack?
I said both.
I know, I was wondering. Okay. What do you...
I can't wait to do yours.
Okay. What are you most ashamed of?
Really, I would say that every year that I get a call that it's my father's yahrzeit, which is you have to go to the center, or I go to the center, that I don't know Hebrew, I don't know how to follow the service, and I feel so embarrassed, like even the other night I went to the center because it's my father's yahrzeit, and then they called me from my brother Sam and my brother Ben and my sister Molly and my mother, and I go there, I don't know whether to stand or sit down, I don't know what to say or so forth on, and I feel embarrassed. That's the reason why I don't go. If I can get out of going a lot of times, I try to get out because I feel so embarrassed about that.
Yeah.
And it's my fault too.
Okay. Okay. If you could go back and change anything today, what do you think it would be that you'd go back and change?
I think on looking back on your life in the past and trying to determine whether you made the right choice or whether you made the wrong choice, would be best that I put more time on some subject or some profession rather than where I went. Because as a school teacher, it was hard making ends meet. I mean, the pay was so little. And then you were off in the summer, and that's when you spent money, even though you never received money because you didn't work. But I think, like I said, the best thing would be that I spent more time finding some profession that I thought I would like and really put time on it.
Would you have gone to law school?
I told you, so far as law school is concerned, I started in preschool law. But like I said, these lawyers who were graduating took jobs in grocery stores or something like that.
So you, looking back now, you wouldn't have, you wish that you had pursued law?
No.
Okay. Okay, what do you think has changed the most in the world today that you have seen? What is the biggest change today in the world?
I think the biggest change is people. Today, if you don't have a person's signature on a piece of paper, you are out of luck. When I was coming up, a man would say something, and that would be his word. That would be just as much as putting your signature down. The attitude of people today, I believe they're a little more criminally minded than they were in the past. And I believe people on the whole care more for each other than they do today.
Okay. What do you think was the most important event in your lifetime?
Getting married to Shirley. Yep, I mean, I would stay up at night thinking about that. And that was very important to me.
All right. If you had a closing message or a philosophy or something that you felt strongly about that you wanted to put on tape so that future generations would see it and remember it or learn from it, from what you have learned, what would that message be? Come close.
I am not a health fiend, so to speak, but in the last 10 years, I have gone through a lot of physical things that have changed my life in many ways. So I always say good health. Don't take everything for granted. Try and watch your health, because if you don't, you're going to pay for it later. I have never thought that I would be in a position where I couldn't throw a ball, even though I am 76 years of age. But I can't. I have arthritis, and my legs give me trouble. I had open heart surgery. I've got cataracts with 2 implants in my eye. Now, a lot of these things could have been prevented if I'd have looked at myself a little more and considered the type of food I ate, or what I did, or what I didn't do. So that's about the thing, the philosophy I would hand out to everyone.
Okay, good. Was there anything that we missed that you wanted to talk about? Any subjects that we missed?
Well, the philosophy that I had with my 2 sons, so far as discipline is concerned,
Sure.
I used to paddle them and burn them up, you know. And they used to look at me and said, the only thing you know how to do is hit. But sometimes they deserved it. I don't think they turned out bad, or I injured them some way, either physically or mentally, by popping them ever so often. I believe in that, even though my daughter-in-law doesn't believe in paddling hers, but I'm afraid that they need some paddling. Not my boy, my youngest one, but the 2 older ones certainly need it right now. And that's about it.
Okay. All right. Should we bring the bride in and talk about...
Did you want to, I just thought, you want to mention Becky as living with you so we can show those pictures?
Becky never lived with me.
Look at that.
When
Did
was
you?
that?
Yeah, she was, well, Becky, when she came from Baltimore,
You have pictures of Becky?
when she
Great.
when she came from Baltimore to Jacksonville, she always stayed with us, and before you know it, she was gone again. She never told you when she was coming or when she was leaving. That's William Richmond's mother.
Maybe you said William stayed. Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
Well,
What-
you know,
There's one
William
aspect,
stayed at the beach with
you might want to talk about the bathhouse, how you, that was a pretty long time.
Yeah, there were quite a few years, a few summers. I would say about 5, 6
Okay.
summers that we were out at the beach.
Easy.
Well, now we're going to get into...
Sure, you were about, Hound was a little...
Well, we're not going to... We haven't gotten children yet.
Oh,
Oh,
this is his work.
Oh.
See, during the summers when he taught, he had a bathhouse,
Oh.
but he ran.
do you remember the bathhouse, Jack?
Oh, yeah.
So
And it burned
that-
down.
So then it had to be about 8,
Oh, so
10
you ran...
years.
during the summers? You ran
During
the
the-
bathhouse?
Yes.
Go ahead and tell me about that.
Well, you on?
Sure.
All right. As I mentioned before, being a school teacher, you didn't make much. And through the Wilsons, who had a lease on the roller coaster block at Jacksonville Beach, there was a bathhouse there. And they gave me the concession of the bathhouse, which I ran, and later I also rented the rubber floats. I did very well. I mean, that came in handy because I made more out of these 2 concessions than I did teaching school. And we would move down to the beach and rent an apartment for the summer. Of course, when we went back, we would stay with, we had a little place at my sister Molly's house, in which we had 1 room in the back porch. Is that right? That is right. Which we made into a kitchen. And later, somebody set fire to the roller coaster. It was wood, and it burned. And of course, being that the bathhouse was under it burned, and that was the end of that.
So you never rebuilt or never got back into it?
No,
That was it?
that's it.
Did you ever find out who burnt it?
No.
That's weird. Okay. What else? Should we go ahead and do your mom and dad together so that we can excuse your dad and then do your mom?
Oh, you do them together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that would be nice. You want to, you can stretch
No,
your
if you can
legs.
get rid of me, I'm going to hit the sack.
Okay, well, we need you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good. You can decide who wants to tell what story, or if one person remembers one thing, the other person jumps in. So why don't you go
Is
ahead?
it all right to jump in?
Yeah, that's fine, because, you know, you 2 of you are talking. Something differently than you do.
You
That's
want
kind
to
of
say
nice.
it, or you want me?
Now,
Oh.
well,
Okay, go
that's-
ahead and start and tell me how y'all met.
Well, this is a long story. I came back from the Pacific coast where my ship put in after being in the far west. And my sister Fanny had a sister-in-law who lived in Baltimore. So she and her husband went up to Baltimore. And from there, she and her sister-in-law and brother-in-law went to New York. For what reason, I don't know. And there, my sister met Shirley, who was her sister-in-law's cousin. And
They came to visit my mother and father.
so when I got home, my sister gives me a picture of her. And of course, she had mentioned to Shirley that she had a brother. So I took the picture and I threw it in my suitcase. And I was going back to the Pacific Coast, and I had to meet this doctor in Chicago, where he and I would go back to the ship together. When I got to Chicago, why, I was a little lonely, and I had a few drinks, and I ran across this picture.
Okay, wait a minute. I think we're having a problem with the audio.
Oh, really?
Wait a minute. I don't think we picked that up.
The whole thing?
What you just, no, just, yeah, what you just said. Talk a little bit.
Well, I ran across this picture of Shirley. So I sat down.
Yeah, let's see.
Play.
Non-union health.
My sister and her husband, Julius, went to Baltimore. I'll tell it this way.
Okay.
To visit her sister-in-law and her brother-in-law. They went to New York together, and Irene, who was her sister-in-law, went to visit her aunt, who was Shirley's mother. And Fanny met Shirley. And of course Fanny told about her brother.
That's not exactly how it
And it
happened.
didn't?
No.
No.
What had happened, I went down to get a cake at the bakery, and when I came back up, his sister Fanny shows me my picture, and she's put your name and address on it. I said, "Don't put my name on." She said, "I want my brother to write to you," and I was never too happy about corresponding. So I said, "Well, what could I do? It's my cousin's sister-in-law. I don't want to say anything." I said, "Oh, he'll never write to me. I don't have to worry because I'll never hear from him." So I went ahead and wrote my address, and sure enough, I did hear from him.
Well, I was in Chicago and I was a little high, lonely, waiting for the doctor to show up. And I wrote her a letter.
The doctor's your friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on out to Portland, Oregon, where my ship was, the doctor and I. And I wrote her a few times. And when the war was over, I went up to New York, and I was staying in a hotel, and they insisted that I stay at their house. Well, they didn't have a big house. I had to sleep in the front room. Where did I sleep? On the couch or something?
Yeah, well, it opened up into a bed.
Yeah. And anyway, when I went home, we had a few dates. When I went home, she came down to Jacksonville with Julius's brother, who was Fanny's brother-in-law. And she stayed at my sister Molly, where I was staying.
Well,
And
well, that was Charlie. That was Irene's husband that brought me down. I was in between jobs. It was just the timing, I guess, was right. And he says, my cousin called me. She says, "Charlie, I'm in Jacksonville, but Charlie's going to Jacksonville. Would you like to ride down with him?" So I said, "Okay, sounds good." And that's what I did.
So she came to Jacksonville. We had dates, and we decided to get married. So they
Very
began to
short
work
courtship.
up there in New York, and all plans were made. And I went up. My brother Ben was going to be best man. My mother went up. Fanny went up with Julius. Molly and Max went up, my other brother-in-law and sister. And my brother Sam were all there. And we were married at the Twin Canners on Eastern Parkway, which is right around the corner from where Shirley lived. And we left there after the wedding, had a beautiful wedding. We left there and went to Jacksonville, where I dropped off all my dirty clothes. Harry met us at the station on a train. And from there we went to Miami, where we were on a honeymoon. We came back. It was hard to find a place to live, very hard. And we stayed in my sister Molly's house. Like I said, we had one room in the back porch. And that's where we lived for quite a while until we bought a home on 24th Street, which was right next to the playground, in which Jack and Howard loved. They'd always be out in the playground playing.
In Jacksonville.
Yeah. And that's the story of how we met and how we got married and where we were on the honeymoon, etc.
Tell me about, okay, so you were engaged, you were never really engaged, you just, how many dates were it before you got married?
Well, we saw each other in New York, and then we saw each other in Jacksonville. But we didn't get married. I think, I would say about six months before we got married, from the time I left Jacksonville to the time we got married. Would you say that?
Easy.
Or maybe longer.
So did you know as soon as you met him?
Not really. No, I didn't. You know, I thought he was nice, but, you know, he lived in Jacksonville. I lived in New York. You know, it's like 1,000 miles away. Well, it was 1,000 miles away. And I never even thought any serious thoughts, really.
When did you know?
Well, when I came to Jacksonville, he was serious, and I gave it a lot of thought when I came home. And I thought it over and spoke to my parents and decided, well, I'll do it.
Did you know? Oh. What did your parents say when you said you were engaged?
Well, they liked Mitchell very much, but my mother wasn't that happy about me going to. I always knew that she wasn't happy about me leaving New York. Well, you know, which is understandable. My father wasn't too upset about it, about that fact, and I think they liked it after they'd come down and visit, and it worked out nicely.
Yeah.
And they enjoyed Florida when they came to see us.
So did you know when you met Shirley that you were going to get married?
No,
When did you decide that?
when she came to Jacksonville.
I was in Jackson for almost two.
In fact, she
I
got
got
sick there.
here.
Got pretty sick there.
Yeah. First time in my life I'd ever been that sick. I had a quinsy throat, and it took about a week before I started to feel better. Your throat closes up and you can't even swallow your own saliva. And at that time you didn't have any penicillin. They did have sulfa, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay. And so you got married where?
We got married in
Brooklyn.
New York at the
Right
Twin
around the
Cannons
corner from where I live.
on the 23rd of November,
1946.
1904 and 6.
Who was the rabbi? Tell me.
There was
who the
Twin
bridal party
Twin
was?
Canton.
Twin Cannons, 2.
Two.
And I had a high hat and tails, which is
Was
kind
that
of
a first and last
unusual
time, Mitchell?
in Jacksonville, but very common in
And
New
that
York.
was the thing at that time. You always wore top hats. Did you have? You didn't have a cane. I think the groomsmen had canes.
And who was in the bridal party?
Let's see. My brother, Ben, was the best man.
My
And
girlfriend Ruth Doxwell, at the time her name was Doxwell, she married eventually. She married my sister-in-law Ruth's brother Harry Block about a year later after we got married.
And my mother was in the party.
Your mother
And Fanny and
walked you down-
Julius,
No,
too.
right.
Fanny and Julius.
Fanny and Julius.
And that's it, wasn't it?
And, well,
Molly and none of them were in it.
no, there were my cousin Ted, God Help was in the wedding party. Charlie was one of the groomsmen, Charlie Levin. Trying to think, my brother Ruby, of course. And
Ben, too, wasn't he?
was Ben a groomsman?
He was in that line,
Yeah,
wasn't
then he was one too. And I can't remember who were the,
he? No.
I didn't have any bridesmaids, I don't think.
It was a sit-down dinner? Or?
Oh yeah, it was a lovely dinner. Everybody had a ball at that wedding. They really enjoyed that wedding. It was a lot of fun.
Was there anything real memorable about the wedding?
Well, the first thing I remember when we came to the table every night, we were sitting at the head table, of course, and I stood up, and I was wearing a dress that had like it's not an apron, but it was like it's hard to describe. But anyway, I managed to get it into the soup. The part that was overlapping the dress, you know, went into the soup. The first thing that was my first thing that happened to me. After that, everything went fine.
Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, tell me about your honeymoon.
Well, we went to Miami. It wasn't
We had
my first time in Miami.
We had a room on the ocean front. It wasn't a big hotel, was it?
No, it really wasn't.
And we went to the dog tracks with
Looked up some
friends,
people, looked up some friends.
some cousins of ours down there. Got a phone call from one of the boys that they were looking for an apartment for us, which I mentioned was hard to get. Seymour, you remember he
I
phoned?
thought he got it. No? No?
I don't remember whether he got it or not. 'Cause we,
It was too expensive.
What was Miami like then?
it was booming. It was booming. I mean,
It wasn't, I don't think it was it that warm to go swimming? I don't remember.
Yeah, we
it
went
was?
swimming.
Did we
We-
go swimming?
we went out on
I remember it being a very small beach, and I was kind of surprised because I kind of expected this big Miami beach. and when we walked out the hotel, it was small. It wasn't what I expected. But it was, I guess we did go swimming. I don't even remember. Isn't that something?
Mm.
Okay. Let's see. All right. So after you got married, tell me about what your occupation was at the time, and tell me where the places that you lived before the children, but right after you got married.
When I came out of the service, I went to work for the Wolfsons. They had bought this big shipyard that were making Liberty ships for the government. And I went to work for them out there. Shirley got a job with the state. What she did, I forgot what she did.
Typing.
Typing and so forth.
Clerical type work.
So, and we were living with my sister Molly in this one bedroom and a back porch, so to speak. And that was it.
And who else lived there?
My sister Molly.
Max.
Mac-
Husband Max.
Leo,
and Leo and Morris.
And Morris.
My nephews.
How was it living with Leo and Morris?
Well, Leo was about 16 at the time, am I right? Or maybe a little younger. And Morris was, about that. And
4
Morris
years
was
younger.
going to be 30.
In fact, she got
I got
sick there.
here.
Got pretty sick there.
Yeah. First time in my life I'd ever been that sick. I had a quinsy throat, and it took about a week before I started to feel better. Your throat closes up and you can't even swallow your own saliva. And at that time you didn't have any penicillin. They did have sulfa, but that's about the extent of it.
Okay. And so you got married where?
We got married in
Brooklyn.
New York at the
Right
Twin
around the
Cannons
corner from where I live.
on the 23rd of November,
1946.
1946.
Who was the rabbi? Tell me.
There was
who the
Twin
bridal party?
Twin Canton.
Twin Cannons, two.
Two.
And I had a hi-hat and tails, which is
First, was
kind
that
of
a first and last
unusual
time, Mitchell?
in Jacksonville, but very common in
And
New
that
York.
was the thing at that time. You always wore top hats. You didn't have a cane. I think the groomsmen had canes.
And who was in the bridal party?
Let's see. My brother, Ben, was the best man.
My
And
girlfriend Ruth Doxwell, at the time her name was Doxwell, she married eventually. She married my sister-in-law Ruth's brother, Harry Block, about a year later after we got married.
And my mother was in the party.
Your mother,
And Fanny and
walked you down-
Julius,
No,
too.
Ryan,
Fanny and Julius.
Fanny and Julian.
And that's it, wasn't it?
And, well,
Molly and none of them were in it.
No, there were my cousin Ted, God Help was in the wedding party. Charlie was one of the groomsmen, Charlie Levin. I'm trying to think, my brother Ruby, of course. And
Ben, too, wasn't he?
was Ben a groomsman?
He was in that line,
Yeah,
wasn't
then he was one too. And I can't remember. Who were the...
No.
I didn't have any bridesmaids, I don't think.
It was a sit-down dinner? Or?
Oh yeah, it was a lovely dinner. Everybody had a ball at that wedding. They really enjoyed that wedding. It was a lot of fun.
Was there anything real memorable about the wedding?
Well, the first thing I remember when we came to the table every night, we were sitting at the head table, of course, and I stood up, and I was wearing a dress that had like it's not an apron, but it was like it's hard to describe. But anyway, I managed to get it into the soup. The part that was overlapping the dress, went into the soup. The first thing that was my first thing that happened to me. After that, everything went fine.
Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, tell me about your honeymoon.
Well, we went to Miami. It wasn't
We had
my first time in Miami.
We had a room on the oceanfront. It wasn't a big hotel, was it?
No, it really wasn't.
And we went to the dog tracks with
Looked up some
friends,
people, looked up some friends.
some cousins if I was down there. Got a phone call from one of the boys that they were looking for an apartment for us, which I mentioned was hard to get. Seymour, you remember he
I
phoned?
thought he got it. But no,
I don't remember whether he got it or not, because we,
it was too
We-
expensive.
What was Miami like then?
it was booming. It was booming, I mean,
It wasn't, I don't think it was it that warm to go swimming? I don't remember.
Yeah, we
it
went
was?
swimming.
Did we
We-
go swimming?
we went out on
I remember it being a very small beach, and I was kind of surprised because I kind of expected this big Miami beach. And when we walked out the hotel, it was small. It wasn't what I expected. But it was. I guess we did go swimming. I don't even remember. Isn't that something?
Okay. Let's see. All right. So after you got married, tell me about what your occupation was at the time, and tell me where the places that you lived before the children, but right after you got married.
When I came out of the service, I went to work for the Wolfsons. They had bought this big shipyard that were making Liberty ships for the government. And I went to work for them out there. Shirley got a job with the state. What she did, I forgot what she did.
Typing,
Typing and so forth.
clerical type work.
So, and we were living with my sister Molly in this one bedroom and a back porch, so to speak. And that was it.
And who else lived there?
My sister Molly.
Max,
Mac-
husband Max,
Leo,
and Leo and Morris.
And Morris.
My nephews.
How was it living with Leo and Morris?
Well, Leo was about 16 at the time, am I right? Or maybe a little younger. And Morris was, about that. And
4
Morris
years
was
younger.
going to be 13.